people have recognized and act as this is a common, so then I can say this is a common, and so I build a law to accordingly, and so I think this is the first question about how to deal for policies, how to deal with self-organizing practices. It's let's say, is it good to act before or after? It's better to act after recognizing something existing, or we have to try to foster something before. And so I stop now, and then maybe.
Thank you, Chiara. Maybe we can go on with Yolanda.
Okay, it's me. So, well, I'm Yolanda Bianchi. I'm a PhD student at the University of Architecture of Venice and the Universidad Autónoma of Barcelona. And I'm working also on the theoretical framework, which framework my research is the notion of the commons. And this is why I think the first contribution is about try to answer to this first question, which is how we can consider this experience as self-organizing experience, etc. At least in my research, what was one of the criteria to select these practices was the kind of relation that the community or the social groups build with the resource, in this case with the building, because I've always studied self-managed spaces. So in that sense, I've tried to analyze what is the connection between the community and the resource. And it doesn't come from my theorization, of course, but it's a definition that Harvey also gave about the urban commons. But also I've tried to analyze what are the kind of relationships that are built between all the members of the community. So in that sense, this is why I said in my paper that I try to use a relational approach, because I try to understand all these relations that happen within the commons, but also relations that happen outside the common. In this sense, what is something that, like one of the assumptions of my research is that autonomy in that sense doesn't exist, or at least commons doesn't exist in their pure form. So we have to try to study the commons in relation to all the variety of other private and public forms of ownership and governance that can influence them. Because at least, and especially in the urban environment, we cannot find like a pure commons. You always have to deal with administration, with private interest, or owners of the land, or goods, or whatever. So you cannot just build up self-organizing spaces or practices completely autonomously from the rest. So this is the first, I think, contribution. In this sense, also the relational approach that I've tried to use is try to understand what are the relation between the commons and all these other institutions, especially the municipal government, which represent the state, and the market, which are all the private interests that are also competing sometimes from the same space of the commons. And I don't know if we can go on with all the other questions, or we just leave for, I don't know, afterwards, or I don't know.
Sì, facciamo più un giro. Marisol?
So I'm Marisol Garcia. I'm an architect and an urbanist. I come from the Bartlett Development Planning Unit from University College London. I'm a PhD candidate there. And I'm here to discuss part of my ongoing research PhD research, which is about temporary use of public spaces in transition in the city of Santiago, in Chile, and it looks both at self-organization practices, but also as more formally produced practices. So I'm looking at both sides of the coin, and it's interesting to have been in these 3 days of this discussion about one side of it, but because I think they're very much connected. And so that I will give a little bit of context of my research, to then go to discuss the first question that has been discussed before. And so I'm looking at the research starting from the point of like how contemporary cities, how public space has been eroded by commodification and privatization of public spaces. And on the one hand, public spaces have been restricted, creating like forms of exclusion and undermining the publicness of public spaces. And on the other hand, we have seen that there are multiple crises, stresses, conflicts, even disasters that have created all these vacant and unattended and unusable spaces in the city that are creating this map. And so I'm seeing that there is different literature and practice that approach these spaces, these abuse spaces, not just as a problem itself, but as something that can bring like progressive change, or what we have been talking. So these urban temporary practices that can be pocket parks, gardens, arts installations, has been labeled like as austerity urbanism, do-it-yourself urbanism, temporary urbanism, tactical urbanism, ephemeral urbanism even, and so on. And so, and they're focusing on different things, some more in the vacant part of the space, and others are more focused on the self-made part of the practices. And so, as Sophie Watson was saying yesterday, like these temporary occupations have long history in cities, and we have seen marked since the origins of public spaces. But there are some scholars that claim that today we are seeing this emergent paradigm because of the global spread of the occurrences and also the faster pace of these practices. In contemporary cities that are affected by this accelerated growth, these practices are seen as transformative responses that are brought by citizens, but also as instrumental responses that are intensifying the capitalist mode of space production. And so I'm interested in that specific gap, and I'm looking to what extent these temporary spatial practices, how I name them, are challenging the traditional or conventional way of space production. So that's like what I'm looking at. And I'm looking in Santiago, which is a highly neoliberalized city, and urban development processes are deeply influenced by the neoliberal restructuring that happened in the country of the Pinochet regime and the influence of the Chicago Boys. So within the case, I choose two. I'm gonna go. I choose like two practices, and one it's more related to like it started as an academic work. It was like some academic project, and some students wanted to claim the river back to the citizens, and so the river was clean. And then they like self-organized 500 people that came down the river one day in 2011. And that project, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but today it's being institutionalized project that is led by the central government. And so to answer the first question, that is like what define self-organization practices and self-organization, I was thinking in two things. One is that they're not linear processes, they are like cyclical processes, so we need to think in time. And we need to think in like why we can define that a practice is just a practice of self-organization. Why we cannot think as a process that sometimes it's more self-organized and sometimes it's less self-organized, or how to by like creating networks or joining or like collaborating with other organizations, then it stopped to be a self-organized practice. Like that is the things that I was thinking on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's also like looking at how I define them in my own like practice, and I define them as self-made experimental actions driven by a transformative will, and that are produced under the logic of reversibility. And so also I think that there is a very useful distinction that Jane Brendel like talk about critical spatial practices, and she add this like counter-hegemonic ingredient to the definition. So it's like it's not just that there are experimental, but there are also practices that are critical to the establishment and that seeks to resist to the dominant social order. So I think we can see both self-organization practices, some that are more critical and some that are less critical. And then I continue the next.
Thank you. Francesco?
But this is not a presentation because we are not allowed to have a presentation, but just review slides in order to help you following what I'm going to say. So I'm very diligent, so I will start saying who I am and what I'm working about, then I will answer the question received by email. So I'm this guy, Francesco Chioderi, I teach in urban studies and urban planning at Social Science Institute. And I used to work on the dark side, unfortunately not of the moon, but just of urban planning and urban development. And it is in this framework which I started addressing the dark or the gray side of self-organization, or rather of housing informality, which I consider here for the purpose of this speech as a subset of self-organization. So housing informality is, roughly speaking, we can consider it as a part of self-organized practices at the urban level. And my research focus, in particular, or my latest research on the link between housing illegality, corruption, and organized crime, in particular in northern Italy. So this is me, and this is what I'm saying today, or what I'm doing these days. I will not tell you about the content of my research, but I will answer the question we received through my research. But before answering the question, I need to contextualize just a bit what this kind of phenomenon, in particular, for those of you who are not familiar with housing illegality in Italy. Otherwise, it's impossible to follow what I'm saying. So just 4 items of very general information about housing illegality in Italy. The first item is it's a massive phenomenon. So we are speaking about something which is very spread all around Italy, in particular in southern Italy, but also, and this is quite interesting, and this is the reason of my research, also in some parts of northern Italy. Just to provide you one datum, since there is Carlo in this room, Carlo worked a lot on housing informality in Rome, and according to him, around 37% of housing units in Rome have been built against or in transgression of planned building rules. So a massive phenomenon, the first item. The second item of information, it doesn't refer to slum settlements. So we are not speaking about shanks made of precarious materials. Generally speaking, housing informality or housing illegality in Italy is barely distinguishable from regular housing, just 2 pictures. So we are speaking about this kind of stuff, not slums, okay? Third items of information, is housing illegality in Italy is not promoted only or mainly by the poor. It's, in the majority of cases, something related to the middle class, or also in some cases to upper classes. Last item of information is it has different causes, obviously. Some of them are economic, some other are institutional. If we look at economic causes, we can see that more than need, so basic need of having a house, the major causes are related to personal advantage and profit. Okay, so these kind of economic causes, but we have also some very important institutional causes. Some of them are related to national amnesties and local and urban policies, and some of them, and this is the side of my the topic of my research, to lato sensu institutional causes, for instance, the presence and activities of organized crime, in particular mafia kind of organized crime. So this is just to provide you with the framework about the topic. So 5 questions, and very quick answer to these questions. So the first question was, which aspect do we define in our research to consider such experiences as experiences of self-organization? Roughly speaking, according to me, housing illegality is part of self-organization because I define it as not produced through ordinary processes led by public authority. But what is important to stress is this doesn't mean that they are outside institution. For instance, just a scheme in order to roughly stress what I want to say. All these practices are in some ways related to formal institution in different ways, even if they are not completely within the control of formal institution, but they are not outside. So this is not a binary understanding of housing information self-organization as something outside formal institutions. First answer to the first question. Second question, which kind of community are these processes producing? Are they producing new political communities? From my viewpoint, in my particular, my case study, they are not producing any kind of political or intentional community. If we want to recognize a community, we can, at maximum, to stress the existence of implicit community of practice. So if we think about what Professor Watson said yesterday, this is not something which is connected to cooperation. In this case, self-organization doesn't mean cooperation. It's more, I would say, an individualistic mobilization for the creation of personal benefits, in some cases very individual benefits. Third question, are self-organization processes, initiatives for a few that cannot produce benefits to a wider range of user, communities and stakeholders? And the answer is they produce direct benefits for a minority, in some cases a large, I would say a large minority, such as in some places in southern Italy, but overall speaking, my understanding of these practices is that they are not oil which greases the wheels, but in the long run, in particular in the long run, they are sent in the machine because they are producing, I would say, overall speaking, negative outcomes for the wider society. Third question, are self-organization processes able to intervene on increasing social spatial inequalities? No. Fifth question, which strategies can be used to positively intervene in the inclusion and exclusion dynamics? Okay, I cannot answer this question because it is quite complex, but I would say that obviously we cannot think that urban planning or urban policies can solve this kind of problem, but the point is that we can, if we look and intervene in urban policies and urban planning, or I would say more generally speaking on the spatial regulatory system, we can reduce certain direct and indirect incentives to these practices. So this is very, very shortly and very briefly the answer to the question you provided, then open for the discussion.
Francesco. Andrew.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for being late. My name is Andrew Wallace. I'm a sociologist at the University of Leeds, in the north of England. But I want to talk today about a project I've been doing in London. And my research has been going on for maybe 3 or 4 years now, looking at neighbourhood planning in London. And this is a new policy instrument that was introduced in 2011 under the guise of localism. We had a coalition, Conservative Liberal coalition government, which introduced a kind of whole set of changes to the planning system in the UK, which basically involved the abolition of regional tiers of urban planning and introduction of neighbourhood planning. So a real kind of localist devolution kind of agenda. This was based on a vaguely anti-statist kind of programme which this government was keen on delivering. Famously, there was, in the UK, we had the National Planning Framework was 1,000 pages in length. They reduced that from 1,000 pages to 65 pages. So a real breakdown of the regulatory structures of urban planning. And in London, we've seen, so okay, neighbourhood planning, if anyone doesn't know, it empowers members of neighbourhoods, a minimum of 21 people in the neighbourhood, to get together and set up a forum. This forum then has the ability to set priorities for the neighbourhood in the form of a planning document, which, if it's agreed to by the municipality, has to be adopted into planning considerations. Crucially, these neighbourhood plans cannot, and this is in the legislation, they cannot be anti-growth and they cannot be anti-development. So they can advise on how, for example, housing developments are allocated, but they cannot stop housing, they cannot stop large-scale development. So this is not really a study of self-organisation as such, it's a study of community responses to, I guess, a kind of empowerment programme, something which is really enrolling, or you may say containing or disciplining neighbourhoods in different ways. Now, one of the interesting things about this, of course, is that they have these groups, these 21 appointed kind of senators or something of the neighbourhood, have to define the neighbourhood boundary, and they can do that in an arbitrary way. They can decide, okay, we'll draw a boundary here, and this obviously involves a negotiation of inclusion and exclusion of different subgroups within the neighbourhood. And this boundary setting is then goes to the municipality, and they can approve or disapprove these boundaries. And this is all happening in a context, of course, of really in London, super kind of gentrification, extreme inequalities which are intensifying, a post-crash programme of austerity, severe cuts to public infrastructures, and at the same time we have this kind of empowerment of the neighbourhood to do things, right? So, so that's, I guess, the kind of context of the programme, of the research. And we've been doing interviews with, I guess, a self-appointed neighbourhood leaders who's sitting on forums, as well as planners in municipalities, and a range of planning consultants. Because one of the probably unforeseen consequences of this has been an increase in private sector planning consultancies emerging. Because of course neighbourhoods who are trying to develop these plans, some of them have planning expertise within them, if they're lucky, if they're well-resourced, well-networked, relatively affluent places, they tend to have professionals who can conduct this civic labour, drawing on their professional expertise, but a lot of places don't really have this. And so there's this sub-industry of planning consultants who have set up businesses to help with the neighbourhood kind of development process. So in terms of the questions we've got, is this a kind of self-organisation? Well, what seems to be happening is that the successful neighbourhood forums are based on pre-existing organisations. So these are typically civic groups who are interested in questions of heritage and restoration. So they have an interest, obviously, in using this policy lever to protect usually kind of Victorian physical landscapes. You have some housing, tenants, residents organisations who've embraced this policy and tried to use it to protect their kind of subsection of the city. And also some business-led organisations, which are basically an association of small or medium-sized businesses who come together and have, again, seized upon this policy to protect their commercial interests within neighbourhoods. So a set of pre-existing organisations who have moved into this space. There's also been some brand new organisation, neighbourhood groups which emerged. Some notable examples in areas that have been threatened by gentrification and displacement, who've seen this policy as a potential way to prevent evictions and so on. Thus far, there's not been a case yet of this being used in that sense. But I guess it takes time for these organisations to formalise, and we're still only 5-6 years into the process, so time will tell if it can be used in, I guess, more progressive, politically progressive direction, rather than just protecting heritage or business or cleaning up neighbourhoods, right? So there's an element in terms of the kinds of community that this is producing. There's a reproduction of the usual suspects kind of paradigm that you see. But I think what's interesting is that the usual suspects who are leading these neighbourhood plans have to legitimate themselves, so they have to reach out and consult and engage other parts of their neighbourhood, which has led to some very difficult negotiations with hard to reach groups within the neighbourhoods. So you have these quite well-versed people who are well-versed in planning and regulation and statutory space, having to then go to people who are completely disengaged from those processes and explain and translate and communicate to them. So it's kind of created this interesting learning, I guess, process. But of course, it's always within the gaze of the self-appointed neighbourhood leaders, who they reach out to, how they do it, and what they choose to hear from those hard-to-reach people. Right? So is it addressing inequalities? Well, no, not yet, really. It's, on the contrary, what you see in some places is a kind of form of urban cleansing. So neighbourhood leaders who are concerned about betting shops or about old pubs or about fast food places. So a kind of classed interpretation of how neighbourhood trajectory, and an attempt to manage and close some of these spaces. So again, there's a kind of clash of I guess, cultural capital preferences or something. So I would suggest that actually there's a danger in some cases of exacerbating or cementing kind of inequalities. Okay, so I guess I'll stop there.
And then we discuss. Romano, Alessandro.
I'm Alessandro Romano. I'm a PhD in sociology and applied social science in the Department of Economics and Social Science on Sapienza University. And I'm mainly job on my interest in my research interest is on political sociology and on power politics. And today I will present a reasoning on the common, and I will present my definition of common. I define the common as a form of social cooperation that by self-government, horizontal, mutual and participate management practice is finalized to the production of goods and services in universal manner. This definition is the result of 3 years research job focused on common theory and on the comparison between common, public and private practice. And today I would say on a theoretical plan, starting from 3 questions that I think are essential to understand the common phenomenon. The first one is why the common is, for which reason part of people, part of citizens would change would adopt a divergent model respect liberal model. And the answer of this question is not much easy. The roots are in a phenomena of the last years, the detachment between the citizens and the representative institutions. Representative institutions that are not good to satisfy citizens' needs. And the result is the process of the politicizations. The maximum expression can be the electoral abstention, for example. But sometimes in parallel exists another phenomenon, the phenomena of repoliticizations. Repoliticization is operated by some social components that are aggregated in autonomous form that generally are free from classical political power and from intermediate structure. For example, unions, political parties. So the common, the exigence of common born here. But the second question is where the common is generated. There are two phenomena that I have studied. The first one is the resilience. Resilience that in translation from hard science to the social science become acquire the sense of the transformability. So the ability of the system to adapt and transform the environment in the direction of new structural models, in new scenarios of stability, also in economic and social field. So resilience is citizens that react to world, to the liberal world in this sense. And another phenomenon is the reterritorialization that are experienced that develop themselves in small and medium-sized territorial contexts. Often are in urban context and often are related to small portion of territory. For example, buildings, public parks, abandoned areas, and that are characterized by citizens slash activists in physical proximity with the subject of contention. The result of these two elements, territorialization and resilience, are the forms of solidarity and mutualism that respond to the needs of the citizens. Needs and questions once guaranteed by welfare state system. I think urban gardens, purchasing solidarity group, self-production and out of the market chain, for example. This practice that belong are similar type of collective actions generally defined as a direct social action. And finally, the third question is more important, much important for me, is which form for the common. In this case, there are two theories. The first one is